Looking for intelligent life. Oops. We made a mistake. Robin, to be in America. Don't ask for a green card. Sally Field spent 2 years working beside Robin Williams on Mrs. Doubtfire, the movie that made the whole world laugh. Every day on that set, she watched him up close. And what she saw behind Robin Williams' laughter was something that stopped her cold. A darkness so carefully hidden that the entire world missed it. She stayed silent about it for decades. At 78, she has finally decided the world is ready. And what she is about to say about the man behind the mask, music, will change the way you hear his laughter forever. In 1946, Sally Field was born in Pasadena, California, directly into the gears of a Hollywood machine that didn't care if she survived it. Her mother was a working actress struggling to stay relevant. And her stepfather was Jock Mahoney, a towering, rugged stuntman who made his living falling off horses and eventually playing Tarzan. For Sally, movie sets weren't places of magic or wonder. They were cold, loud factories where she watched adults crumble under the weight of rejection. She grew up in the shadow of the unpredictable. She saw the panic in an actor's eyes when a role was lost and the hollow silence of a house when the paycheck stopped coming. This turned her into a quiet, haunted observer. At an early age, Sally had learned the most dangerous skill in show business. This is all I need right now. Look, why can't Ann do it? Excuse me, dear, but I don't think it's appropriate to argue with music, your mother, in front of how to look at a person's smiling face and see the terror they were hiding underneath. But as she stepped into her first big role, she had no idea that the industry was about to build a mask for music, that would take music decades to rip off. By the time she was a teenager at Birmingham High School, she was already testing the waters of acting. In 1965, her life took a massive turn. At just 18, she was cast as the lead in a sitcom called Gidget. We've never spoken a word, but he's got a real case on me. How do you know? She played a sun-drenched teenager who loved surfing. And almost overnight, she became one of the most famous faces in America. But as soon as Gidget ended after one season, the studio pushed her into a new show called The Flying Nun. In that show, she played Sister Bertriel, a tiny nun who could literally fly through the air. The show was a huge hit with families. Oh, you speak English? Well, I'm from Boston. It goes with the territory. But for Sally, it felt like music a trap. She was in her early 20s wanting to be a real actress, but the entire world saw her as a cartoon character in a habit. She realized that in Hollywood's eyes, she wasn't a talent. She was a prop. Producers told her she wasn't pretty enough for movies or serious enough for drama. They told her to stay in her lane and keep smiling for the sitcom cameras. Sally refused. She knew if she stayed in television, her career would die the moment the show went off the air. She decided to do something radical. She walked away from the easy money and enrolled at the Actors Studio. There she studied under Lee Strasberg, the man who taught method acting. He forced her to stop performing and start using her real-life pain and memories to build characters. It was a brutal process that stripped away the cheery girl image she had used to survive her childhood. Her first chance to show the world the new Sally Field came in 1976 with a television movie called Sybil. She played a woman with 16 different personalities, all born from horrific childhood trauma. It was a role that required her to be raw, shaking, music, and completely unhinged. When it aired, the industry was stunned. The Flying Nun was gone, replaced by a powerhouse. She won an Emmy, and for the first time, people stopped laughing. 3 years later, she landed the role of Norma Ray, playing a brave, tired woman working in a southern textile mill. There is a famous scene where she stands on a table in the middle of the loud, dusty factory and holds up a sign that simply says Union. That performance earned her her first Academy Award. She wasn't a sitcom kid anymore. She was the best actress in the world. In 1984, she did it again. Music. She won her second Oscar for Places in the Heart, playing a widow fighting to save her farm during the Great Depression. When she walked onto that stage to accept the trophy, she gave a speech that people still talk about today. She looked out at the room of legends and said, "You like me right now? You like me?" It wasn't just a happy comment. It was the cry of someone who had spent 20 years being told she didn't belong. By the early 1990s, Sally Field had finally forced Hollywood to respect her. She had starred in massive hits like Smokey and the Bandit and Steel Magnolias. She had 2 Oscars on her shelf music and a reputation as one of the most disciplined performers in the business. But in 1993, she walked onto a set music that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her craft. She had been cast in a family comedy called Mrs. Doubtfire. You and the children to join us. Oh, how lovely. One big happy family. I wouldn't miss that. For the world should be smashing good fun. And the man waiting for her, there was a performer whose energy, creativity, and hidden sadness would change her life forever. His name was Robin Williams, the whirlwind and the anchor. Walking onto the set of Mrs. Doubtfire felt like stepping onto a different planet for Sally Music Field. For decades, she had built her career on careful preparation and staying in the music moment. But with Robin Williams, the moment changed every 5 seconds. He was the voice of the genie in Aladdin, the tragic teacher in Dead Poets Society, and the wild comic genius the whole world loved. May I see the ad? Miranda, just let me look at the ad. I have a right as their father, please. Anything else you want to say? Are you offering? He was a human lightning bolt who never seemed to turn off. Producers knew that putting Robin in a dress and a rubber mask was a guaranteed hit, but they also knew they needed someone to stop the movie from flying apart. They needed an actress who could look at a man in a wig and make the audience believe the heartbreak behind the costume. Oh, again. I found the best way to keep from smoking again, lighting up, is to be around those who do smoke. Deeply thoughtful, almost quiet soul that sat underneath. And as the movie progressed, more surprises were still on the way. Inside the Doubtfire set, once the cameras actually started rolling in San Francisco, the set of Mrs. Doubtfire became a place of high-stakes improvisation. For a disciplined actress like Sally Field, it was like trying to perform a play in the middle of a hurricane. The director, Chris Columbus, quickly realized he couldn't film a normal scene with Robin. He started shooting with 3 or 4 cameras at once because he never knew where Robin was going to go. Robin would do one take exactly by the script, a second take with a few jokes added, and a third take where he completely lost his mind. This meant the production ended up with hours of alternate footage. For Sally, it required incredible concentration just to stay in character. One of the first major tests was the scene where Miranda first meets the new nanny. Sally Music had to stand there and play a serious professional mother while Robin, fully transformed into an elderly British woman, began throwing out lines that weren't on the page. Stay a few extra hours this evening. Stu, that's more of a thick soup than a name, really. The humor was so explosive that the crew often struggled to keep the camera steady. Even seasoned actors would break and start laughing, forcing the production to stop until everyone could get their heads together. Then there was the famous face mask scene. In the script, the nanny's mask is supposed to fall off, but during the actual filming, the white icing on Robin's face began to melt under the hot studio lights and drip into his tea. Instead of stopping the scene, Robin pivoted instantly. He started improvising jokes about cappuccino and his face melting off. Sally had to sit across from Musicam, watching this man's face literally dissolve while maintaining the serious, slightly suspicious tone of her character. She became the emotional anchor. If she laughed, the scene was over. By staying grounded, she made the absurd moment feel real. The biggest challenge, however, was the restaurant sequence. Music, this was a physical and comedic marathon. Robin had to sprint between 2 different tables, changing clothes and switching voices from the father, Daniel, to the nanny, Mrs. Doubtfire. A time when I found myself funny, but today you have proven me wrong. Thank you. He was improvising voice changes and gestures that kept the entire cast on edge. Sally sat at the family table, reacting to the chaos with the eyes of a woman who was truly fed up with her husband's games. It was her realism that balanced Robin's storm, creating a tension that made the comedy work. But what surprised Sally the most wasn't just the humor. It was how quickly Robin could switch emotional gears. He could be doing a wild, physical bit 1 second, and then suddenly deliver a quiet, heartbreaking line about his failed marriage the next. These moments reminded everyone on set that the story wasn't just a comedy. It was about a father confronting the consequences of his own mistakes. Between these high-energy takes, a completely different version of Robin appeared when the director called Cut the Whirlwind Stop. Crew members often recalled how Robin would walk over to the technicians' music and grips, remembering their names and asking about their family. Yeah, well, that's kind of my theory. I think you don't have to play down to them. You just play to them. Despite being the music biggest star in the world, he treated the people behind the scenes with a quiet, genuine respect. He would check on people to make sure they were doing okay, showing a gentle presence that was the total opposite of his manic, on-camera persona. As filming continued, Sally began to notice music, something else. Beneath the unstoppable humor and the constant improvisation, there were moments when Robin's energy seemed to quiet down completely. In those small windows of time, she sensed a deeper emotional complexity. It was subtle, almost impossible to put into words, music, but she began to feel that behind the laughter and the brilliance, Robin Williams was carrying a sadness, music, that few people truly understood. Recognizing that side of him would change the way she remembered him forever. This is the turning point of the story. To get that Madman Markham grit, we have to stop treating these as movie scenes and start treating them as psychological events that Sally Field had to survive in real time. The side of Robin Williams, Sally Field began to notice. The day the world lost Robin Williams. On August 11, 2014, a wave of silence washed over the world. The headline felt like a cruel mistake. Robin Williams dead, music at 63. For millions of fans, it felt like a glitch in reality. For many, Robin was the guy who got them through the hard stuff. Music, he was the genie. He was the teacher in Dead Poets Society. He was Mrs. Doubtfire. He had spent 40 years being the world's therapist and best friend, making us laugh until we couldn't breathe. Music, in the weeks that followed, the details started to leak out, and they were devastating. The world found out that Robin wasn't just sad. He was fighting a war on multiple fronts. Music, he was struggling with deep depression and anxiety. But there was something even more terrifying happening inside his head. I'm not taking any crap from you, pal. Well, in the words of Porky Pig. Later, the medical exams revealed he had Lewy body dementia. If you don't know what that is, imagine a genius whose entire life is built on his mind, his speed, his memory, his wit, and then imagine a disease that starts systematically shutting those things down. It causes cognitive confusion, paranoia, and hallucinations. For a man like Robin, it must have been like being trapped in a horror movie where your own brain is the monster. He was losing his spark, and he knew it. Sally saw the headlines and finally understood the protective shield she had witnessed on music, the Doubtfire set. The comedy hadn't just been a job for Robin. It was his way of connecting to a world that felt increasingly frightening. She remembered the way he treated the crew, kindly. She realized he was desperate to make sure everyone else was okay, because he wasn't. Years went by and Sally Field kept those memories tucked away. She hit 78 years old, looking back on a life filled with 2 Oscars, 3 sons, and a list of losses that would break a lesser person. But Robin stayed with her. He was the one who stayed, a ghost from 1993 that she couldn't stop thinking about. Finally, she decided she couldn't keep it inside anymore. She chose to speak out, not about the celebrity Robin Williams, but about the human being she saw behind the rubber mask. Sally Music Field finally tells the truth. Years later, when the cameras were finally put away and the red carpets had rolled up, Sally Field sat down to reveal the one thing she had been holding back. She admitted that her bond with Robin Williams was one of the deepest of her life. But it wasn't the romance the tabloids had always hunted for. She looked into the lens and said, "I really loved him." But it wasn't like a romance. It was more complicated than that. It was the love of 2 survivors who had recognized the same scars in each other. You can't move at all. You can't move to the next level. Music, you can't find out what she admitted her greatest regret, the things she never said. She wondered with a heavy heart if Robin ever truly knew how much he was appreciated, not for the jokes, but for the quiet, tired man he was. When the mask was off, she realized to music late that she had been standing next to a miracle that was slowly evaporating, and she hadn't reached out to hold on to it tight enough. In those final reflections, Sally delivered a message that felt like a warning to the world. She realized that Robin Williams was the ultimate human contradiction. A man who could manufacture infinite joy for the entire planet while his own internal world was collapsing into darkness. To Sally, Robin's life was a reminder that the people who bring the most light into our lives are often the ones fighting the hardest to find a single spark for themselves. She realized that some people are like falling stars. They burn so bright and move so fast that they aren't meant to last. But the light they leave behind stays burned into your retinas long after they vanished into the black. Robin Williams was that light for her. And as she looked back on their time in 1993, she realized that The Funny Nanny wasn't the story at all. The real story was the man who gave everything until there was nothing left to give. Music, but even now, as she honors his memory, one question still haunts her every time she sees his face on a screen. If we had looked past T.H.